A quick note on the RSS feed that you are subscribed to right now. There's 3 shows on the same RSS feed. The first one is Gaming with Grief. That comes out every Sunday, and the video version of it hits YouTube Monday morning at 7 a.m. So you can go there if you want to watch the video version, or you can just listen to the audio version on Apple iTunes, Amazon Music, or Spotify. It hits those places Sunday afternoon usually. And again, the video version will hit Spotify like probably Monday evening, but 7 a.m. YouTube, if you want to watch the video version, go there. The second show is The Grief of Politics. I have a co-host, Avin Carroll. We talk about something every month. The audio version of that on the feed hits on the 19th in the afternoon, usually when it posts. The video version hits YouTube 7 a.m. the 20th of every month. So go there, leave comments, all that kind of stuff. Normal stuff you would do on a YouTube channel. The third one is a tabletop RPG show that I play with my friends. I'm the GM this time. That hits on the 1st and the 15th of every month. On the audio feed, it usually hits in the afternoon. So on the afternoon of the last day of the month and the afternoon of the 14th. The video, again, hits YouTube on the 1st and the 15th at 7 in the morning. So if you want to go there, you can watch every episode, subscribe, like, and all these shows, if you want to write to me, you can write to me at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com. Or you can leave a comment below the YouTube video. Or if you want to go to gamingwithgrief.com, you can go to www.gamingwithgrief.com, leave a comment below the episode, and you can do the same thing for The Grief of Politics. Go there below the episode and leave a comment. It's thegriefofpolitics.com, and you can leave a comment on the episode or things like that. And you can also write to me anywhere at, again, gwgpodfellows@gmail.com. That's just a general email address for the RSS feed. So if there's a specific topic or episode you want to talk about, you can leave it there. So thank you so much for supporting the show in any way you do. I just wanted to make a quick note. So have a good day. And now we'll get on to the episode. Hello, my name is Joseph Carlson, and this is episode 256 of Gaming with Grief. I had to look that up because there's a lot of episodes. I am joined by Avin Carroll from, I don't know why I said your name weird, from The Grief of Politics. This is just a thing where I've been reading about this more and more, and we have to do this more because I was reading these, and I just got an epiphany. We have to do this with more game developers, but we're just calling this episode, What's Going On, Microsoft? What's going on? Because they've been in the news quite a bit. Obviously, you and I haven't covered the layoffs that happened. I'll probably put the little thing up above for that episode. So if people want to watch that, I'll do that. But what I find fascinating about Microsoft is this first article that we're going to talk about that like crossed my purview. You know, I listen to a lot of gaming podcasts and stuff like that. And someone just mentioned this on a news show I was watching. And the article is called This was written by Kotaku. It was released on March 26, 2024. And it was written by Zach Zywin. I probably said his name wrong. I'm just going to read the intro of this. Reportedly, some third-party video game publishers aren't sure why they should keep making and supporting games for Xbox consoles due to poor sales in Europe. In a new podcast from GameIndustry.biz, the head outlet Chris Dring explained that while at the 2024 Game Developers Conference, he heard that flatlining Xbox hardware sales in Europe have made some companies question what the point is continuing to support Microsoft brand and its various consoles due to declining audience and lack of growth. So yeah, that's kind of how it starts. And it lays out this whole thing about how it's not worth it for people to do this. And for me, I understand Game Pass's thing. You and I have talked about it privately and on this podcast before. It's a great value in gaming for $15 a month, $10 a month. Yep. You get a stable of games. You get Xbox Live. You can play online for, that amount of money. They give you a bunch of free games. If no one is developing games, you don't have a lot to put on Game Pass. If this stagnates, there's no point. And I understand that, Xbox is about a service industry. Now, this episode, I don't want to be really that critical of Microsoft. I do think the whole gaming industry is in transition, not only with the layoffs that we've talked about many times on this podcast, but also the fact that, console sales are down, every manufacturer, mostly. And even PlayStation, who doesn't do day and date like Microsoft does, doesn't really have a Game Pass. They have subscription tiers. They're starting to put their stuff out on PC. And they even said in one of their investor calls, we're going to try to do this quicker. So instead of waiting 6 to 8 months for something to hit PC, then hit our consoles, we're going to try to narrow that gap. So, and they said this is just to help us be more profitable. So now all game developers are like, hey, we got it. There's got to be more to this, you know? But that being said, the big asterisk is if there's nothing to give someone a service for, like I don't go to a restaurant and they go, what do you want? Yeah, I'll cut that out.
Sorry about that.
It's fine. You're totally fine.
Middle.
But if you don't have anything to provide to that service, what are you going to sell? You know what I mean? Like it's the chicken and the egg thing. You know, hey, your service is great. What do you got? Right. Nah, not much. Right. Well, then I don't really want your service. You know?
Your service is great. What do you have available for an option? We have slices of bread.
Yeah, and you're like, well, I can get slices of bread anywhere. So, like, what? Right. You know? So, I mean, I say these articles, what were your kind of takeaways when you were reading them and stuff? Obviously, you're not as video gamed up as I am.
You moved on a little bit quick, so I'm going to close the loop a little bit. This article you're talking about is published on Kotaku. Some publishers reportedly not sure why they should keep supporting Xbox. Obviously, that is the paragraph you read. That big question. I'm going to butcher the guy's name. It's
Zywin, I think. Yeah, it's Wyzen.
Zwizen?
Yeah, it's Wyzen. It's Chinese. It's Wyzen.
Published March 26, 2024. So, right, like, this could be a big deal for Microsoft. I'm a little bit curious about this myself because, you know, I'm asking, well, why would I port to Xbox? And I'm like, well, because there's an audience over there. Even if it is flatlining, there's still an audience. If there's 1 million people in Europe that are playing on Xbox and I have potential in the marketplace for 1 million people to do it, I'm just going to have to do the math. How much does it cost me to do the port? Right. It's not too terribly expensive. Well, I want the audience. If it is expensive, I'm not going to get the audience.
The one thing they did mention... I'm not
going to go for it.
The one thing they did mention in the article was there's 2 versions of the Xbox, right? There's the Series X and the Series S, and the S is less powerful. And like Baldur's Gate 3 was in the news. They couldn't get it to work on the S. And Xbox had a thing about there has to be parity when it releases. It has to work on the Series X and the Series S. And Baldur's Gate was blowing the doors off in sales numbers. And so months down the line, Phil flew to Amsterdam and talked to Sven Vicky and was like, okay, no parity, because they wanted the game on S. They wanted people to buy the game. And Microsoft's been very open that the S is sold really well. I think they said over 50% of their sales of consoles has been the S.
X or S?
The S, the smaller digital version, because it's, you know, less of a footprint. Maybe people are a little playing Fortnite, like they're not into, you know, maybe they're into indie games, but they're not into Halo or whatever, and they want it's cheaper too.
Well, it's more affordable too, right?
Yeah, it's like $200.
Do I really need this little bit of extra performance if I can play my game on both because Microsoft is demanding parity?
Yeah. I just think, like I said, the whole games industry is kind of in a bit of flux right now, and Microsoft's the one where I'm like, wow, they're really reporting that, like, is it going well? You know, like
Microsoft, the second article you sent, the one that was largely an interview or highlight of an event where Phil Spencer was talking.
Yeah.
That article came from, I think it was Polygon? Yeah, Polygon. Phil Spencer on what the hell is happening in the games industry. And that was really eye-opening for me, right? Like, Phil spent a lot of time talking about, like, hey, the industry is as a whole is flatlining. Like, people that are buying consoles are upgrading from consoles. They're not new customers.
Yeah.
Well, because... Right? Like, game exclusivity is becoming more and more damning because you look at the economics of, you know, as we've talked about on this podcast before, flagpole games, tentpole games are getting really, really expensive to make. And if you demand it be exclusive, like, you've got a smaller audience to sell out to. And if you need to sell 10 million copies of a game or 7 million copies of a game to make your money, like, you want everyone who owns a console to be able to buy your game. As long as the economics of the port are there. If you develop it that way from the ground up, if it's affordable to develop it that way from the ground up, even better, because you can go live day one to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think they kind of rocked gaming. I think it was a few months ago. Microsoft's going multi-platform. They're no longer making consoles. That turned out not to be true. They had a town hall with Phil, Sarah Bond, and Matt Booty. Tina Amini interviewed them. It was like a 20-minute podcast. Phil said, well, listen, those people want to do those announcements. I could say 4 games are coming to other platforms, but we're not going to announce that. And it turned out to be Sea of Thieves, which is a games as a service where you got to log on and everybody gets to be a pirate. So I don't see a downside there. The more people that are in the community, boom, there you go. You get more people to play with, stuff like that. And
more subscriptions to sell.
Even though Sony's going to take a 30% cut, that's still 70% of the money to Microsoft. Then you got Hi-Fi Rush, which is like a small little indie game. I don't see any problem with that. It's like $30 or $40. So really, like, who does that hurt? That studio deserves to have as many people look at that indie game as possible, And then what else? There was 4 total. I think Grounded was another one, which is like again, it's a games as service where it's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, where everybody's in the yard trying to get to the back door and you have to fight ants and spiders and stuff, and you build like structures and weapons to try to fight everything. And
cool.
I think there was like one other one that Pentiment, which is like, it looks like an old 15th century painting where you're an investigator and you are trying to figure out who killed this duke. And it's kind of cerebral, but it was done by like a pretty big studio. The name escapes me, but that's coming to PlayStation as well. And the fans, I don't know if they freaked out, but it was like, what? Why are you doing this? And it's like, well, more people need to play these games. Like, these studios work really hard on it. Pentiment was a smaller project, so probably didn't have the budget of a Halo. Grounded was in early access for a while, so the team can iron out the bugs. Sea of Thieves is in, I think, open beta on PlayStation. It's been out on Xbox for years. It's going to launch with all that content, but, it's a different audience, I guess, in PlayStation. So they launched it on a new console and things may blow up or not work or crash. It's like, oh, this is different. I don't know. I just think in the short term, I think for Xbox, it's going to be bad, right? It's going to look bad. Like, these flatlining sales. They even said Game Pass hasn't grown the way they wanted it to grow. And so that's troubling if you're trying to get things on PC and nobody's picking up Game Pass. They're just buying it on Steam. And I think, too, like, we're as a society, I was going to say as a people, I mean, that's true. But we have a lot of, like, I think we're all tired of subscriptions. So we're all looking through subscriptions going, what do I need and what do I want? And,
you need to get your value out of it, right? Like, I don't think we're tired of subscriptions. I think we see value and purpose in it, right? I mean, I think there is humor to it, right? 20 years ago, we were like, I don't want to pay the cable company. Get the channels I want. And now all of us are like, but like, I got all these different things. But if you go back and look at it, right? Like, 20 years ago, if you wanted to have just like basic cable, it was like $50 or $60 a month.
Yeah.
And now you subscribe to your subscription services and you're spending $45 or $50 a month, but you're getting the subscription services you chose. I think gaming's the same way, right? Like, if I'm going to buy Game Pass, I want to make sure that the games I'm going to play on there are going to be worth it, right? Like, you pay for Game Pass, right?
Yep.
And you probably play a couple of games, and then when something new comes out you're curious about, like, you hop in and play for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the way I do the math is I just downloaded Diablo 4. It's cheaper than it was when it launched, but if I was to buy that, like, I downloaded it, I can play it as much as I want. I had a problem with the login screen. Anyway, the way I look at it is, okay, so say Diablo 4 is $50. I spend $15 a month on Game Pass. I play it for 2-3 months casually. It paid for itself. Now I'm on to the next game.
Well, you play a lot too, though, right? Because of this podcast, like, you're constantly playing it. So the ability to have Game Pass would be great for you. If the other developing spheres looked at Game Pass as a big enough marketplace, I think there'd be more incentive for them to port their games too and make fewer games exclusive to PlayStation.
Yeah, I think also
or Nintendo.
I think also those that Microsoft reaches out and does deals with people to hey, do you want to be exclusive on Game Pass? And a lot of developers have, like, they not broken an NDA, but they just talk very generally of, like, hey, we got this many people in the studio. We are literally, it's being at a casino. We rolled the dice and said, this is worth this, cut us a check because we don't think it's going to sell X amount of copies. Or some people have said, we think we'll do fine. And maybe they have, maybe they haven't. They probably can't really break an NDA, but that's really what it is them literally just running the numbers saying, can we
any business, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to look at it. You got to make your decision. Here's how big our market is. Here's how much we think we're going to sell. Here's how much, exposure we're going to get, and kind of go from there. I agree. There was a statement from Phil that, like, what we're looking at in our research, it was towards the end of that particular article. What we're looking at in our research is basically Gen Z doesn't want to play on consoles, and so we
Yeah, they're
need to
using
make our
phones.
stuff available everywhere. Um, blah. Okay, here it is. Phil Spencer, his statement was. This notion that Xbox can only be this one device that plugs into a television isn't something that we see in the Gen Z research, because nothing else to them is that for them. Some of them will have an iPhone, some will have an Android, but all the games and everything are the same. I can
Yeah.
still get to TikTok on both of them, at least for now. All of their stuff is available wherever they want it. So for Xbox, our brand pivot, as we attract and maintain relevance with the younger audience, is Xbox is a place where I can find the great games I want to. Meaning that, like, moving away from the focus on consoles with that viewpoint makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at, I think the other article talks about basically Phil Spencer or Microsoft admitting, like, hey, we lost the console.
Oh yeah. They were actually. I'm a fan of Kind of Funny, and they were on Kind of Funny being interviewed, and Phil admitted that he said during the Xbox One generation, with the PS4 and the Xbox One generation, that was where everybody had digital libraries, and it was like, well, everything's locked literally in this box, and I can't move because that stuff's not going to move. And he said we lost that generation, which is probably the worst generation to lose, because people are already locked in. And so because we lost that, he said in that thing, he said we're in third place, and there's only 3 console manufacturers, right? So to say you're 3 out of 3 is not good, But he was honest.
That was for a hot minute, but Stadia died fast.
Yeah, Stadia. By the way, Baldur's Gate 3 was supposed to be a Stadia exclusive, whatever. And
really,
yeah, Sven came out and said it wasn't our best decision, but I'm glad in a way it didn't work out. We were able to just release it on other whatever. So they were a small indie studio, right? So he's like, well, they cut us a check, so like it seems like a good deal, but then it turned out to not be a good deal.
Right. Hindsight 2020, man. Holy cow.
Yeah, again, I don't want this to seem super negative about Microsoft. I just think it's such a thing of flux, especially with the layoffs. The only criticism I'd lob is that I told you on the phone, reading this article, Phil is kind of lamenting the industry, and he is in a position of power to do something about it.
But it sounds like he kind of talks about like he wants to too, right? Like I was reading this before we started, and I really feel like let me see if I can find the quote where he's basically talking about like, we don't want to be exclusive. Like we want to be in the industry and move the industry forward. Was kind of the sense that I got. Like, so kind of midway through the article, in the middle of this paragraph. So that's why I keep pivoting back to how does this industry get back to growth? But to your question, for us as Xbox or any of the teams out there, it is really an outcome of an industry that's not growing. It can grow and it will grow again. But you see this time right now, and the implications have. Human impact. And we should all reflect on that and think about it. And he goes on later on to bring up that we want to be in the industry, like growing with the industry, moving the whole industry forward. And so he keeps coming back to the idea of exclusivity and kind of wanting to break that, because that breaking exclusivity deals will help grow the industry and push the industry forward to more people. Hey. I think for Microsoft too, that's better, right? Because they don't want their competition to have exclusive games. They want to have access to those so they can have the store as a service. They want to be a Steam.
Yeah, if there was, I've used the Xbox Cloud service on Game Pass before. It was pretty good. It could get better, obviously, with internet's improving and stuff like that. I sounded very old to say internet's improving. Anyway, with all that kind of stuff getting better, it could be better. It's good now. I would definitely, I'm not attached to PlayStation or Xbox. If PlayStation had an app and said, hey, stream all of your games on a phone or a tablet, sure, I would do that. I'd still go to the PlayStation store and buy one of their exclusives, from their app. Right. Like if they're like, hey, if way in the future internet was good enough that we could play on any device, and PlayStation said, hey, we're coming out with a new God of War. It's our game. If you buy it from our store, you're going to get a discount, right? If you buy it on the Xbox, Game Pass, whatever, they'll charge you a little bit more. That would still incentivize you to use PlayStation stores, but you wouldn't have these $400, $500 boxes under your TV set, that you have to, that are like this dedicated whatever. that's Xbox's big thing right now with like they bought Activision and all that stuff. It's like, hey, we put Diablo 4 on Game Pass. You don't have to go buy Diablo. If you're playing on PlayStation, you got to go buy it. You don't have to buy it through us. You could just subscribe to Game Pass and get it. In side news, one thing I just heard out is, I think it was a couple years ago, Activision got booted out of China, apparently with NetEase or whoever it was, Tencent. They had a disagreement over like licensing things they were going to renew. And somebody from the negotiating thing kind of said anonymously, like, hey, we have a problem with one party member on the other side. That's why we weren't able to sign the deal. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist, Avin, and I don't have a magic 8-ball, but I'm willing to put a pretty dollar on the fact that it might have been Bobby Kotick. Just saying. But Phil announced the other day with him and Sarah Bond and the team, they said, hey, we reached a deal with Tencent, all the World of Warcraft stuff, and Hearthstone and all that, and Overwatch will be back in China again. So all you people that were playing in China that your account got frozen, basically, you can play again. And I was like, wow, that's great. Not only is that a big area of growth for them, all those people that, they weren't getting money from, I think it's been a year. I think it was in January or last January, so a year and some.
I don't remember.
But anyway, it's like that's an area of growth, a different country. And all those people wanted to spend the money, they just couldn't because of licensing. So now they're like, hey, I'm going to reactivate my subscription or whatever, So,
right.
Again.
Right. And what that translate to in China, I don't know, right? Like, how the renminbi translates to dollars and right now exchange rate and what they charge. Is it equivalent or not?
Yeah. What do they, you want to make it affordable, but you still want to make profit. And I don't know if their data centers are over there too. Like, I don't know how that works out.
Actually, I wouldn't be right. It's not renminbi. That is a currency, but it would be the yuan, I guess, would be the exchange measurement.
Yeah,
anyway.
That's what they, I'm
you
just
would
very,
know better than me.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, yuan's on the official thing. The renminbi is like what people say in town and stuff, in the banks. But it is yuan on the currency anyway. Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of, I might have to do this again with Nintendo and with Sony because Nintendo's really, they make fun of Nintendo all the time because they do not care. They're like, oh, we have like this high-powered machine that does 4K, and Nintendo's like, we have motion controls in our controller. Man, but this is fun. Look at this, Hey, Mario Kart sold 50 million copies, and
I mean, Nintendo, for all of the really cool, gorgeous graphics you get on the high-end Xbox or PlayStation,
or PC,
for all of the amazing AAA titles that you get on those systems that are just like gorgeous and beautiful, Nintendo's focus has stayed the same since their inception. Fun.
Yeah, they say that all the time. Like, there was, I guess the new Breath of the Wild, the new Zelda, the Tears of the Kingdom. I guess they said it sold 18 million copies. You know how many people would kill to sell 1 million copies of their game? And Nintendo's like, hey, look at this over here. We did 18. It runs at 30 frames a second. Does it chug a little bit when you try to glue too many random things together and fly it off a cliff? It does. But you're still having a good time and you're laughing the whole time. Every time I brought my wife in to show her some weird contraption in Tears of the Kingdom and it would fall apart and I'd fly off a cliff, I was laughing the whole time.
Right.
Yeah, you don't really get that in Halo.
You're having fun, and that's the whole point with Nintendo, right? Like, they don't design their games to be these super gorgeous, beautiful games, right? Like, they want them to look good, they want them to run well.
Well, I think
that's important for the experience, but they're really far more concerned about the experience. Are you having fun when you play our game?
I mean, I think, too, the one thing that people don't... I mean, maybe they do. They're really plugged in. I think the one thing that Nintendo does really well is art design. Like, they're like, listen, this thing isn't going to run at 60 frames a second. It's not going to look 4K. How can we make it look unique enough to be like, oh, this looks different than other games I have played?
Right.
Even the design from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom, it's supposed to be in the future, and they changed... the design of everything, and you're like, oh, that's so cool. Like everything, they did a different period piece in Japan that they based it off of, and like, they do stuff like that. Or like, what is this, the Mario game? This is weird, like these are weird creatures. Like, yeah, like that's because that's what we did. Like the new Carlos playing at the new Super Mario Wonder, you turn into an elephant. Who knows why? You just do. You grab a power up and turn into an elephant and start blasting people with water and stomping on them. It's crazy.
Tanuki?
Not in that. It may come in DLC. I don't know. Like they're like, well, we're gonna come out there. And Sony,
but like that's why Nintendo, 15 years ago or whatever with the Wii, uh, was able to come in and become the number two console over Xbox, even though they were way underpowered. Like I remember all the publications talking about Nintendo being so underpowered.
Well, it was standard def, and everything around him was high def, right? Remember that was a big switch.
Right.
So I remember you coming over to my.
We're still buying them.
I remember you coming over to my house, and I was playing Super Mario Galaxy, and you were like, "This doesn't look good." And then like you watch me play for 10 minutes, you go, "This looks really fun." I go, "It is." Like that's the point. I'm a B right now. Why am I a B? Nobody knows. I want to do it with Sony too, because I think Sony is kind of like, they've been in the limelight more because that those documents leaked with Insomniac, who was making Spider-Man, and they were literally going, "You need to lay people off." And it's like, well, Spider-Man broke sales records and stuff. And they're like, "Yeah, but it went over budget by $50 million, and it ended up costing us $300 million." And you're like, ooh. And so even for their CEO, the new CEO, Jim Ryan stepped down, I think, during the quarter or whatever, he stepped down and they have a new CEO. He said, "Listen, we understand where we are. We want to get these things to the consumer faster. That doesn't mean we want to cut corners. But if you look at the companies they bought, like Nix and stuff like that, those people port games to PC. That was Nix's whole job." And so they got Ghost of Tsushima that came out a few years ago. They've done Horizon. Apparently looks beautiful. It seems like they're kind of picking up pace of, we need to do this more and more. We need to cut a profit, Obviously, the Fallout show hit Amazon, so that's going to be a boon, I guess, for Microsoft, because that's a Fallout series that, Microsoft owns that series now. So I've heard it's really good. I want to watch it. I was too busy watching X-Men last night, so the new animated show. So
X-Men 97?
Yeah, it was good. I watched, 2 episodes?
I haven't watched any of it. I might have to check that out.
It's pretty good. They do it in the same style where everything's 24 frames, where it looks slightly old and it isn't as fluid as new animation. It looks like it was done in the 90s, So
that was their whole intention, right?
Yeah, it's like they chopped frames out of it and stuff. Well,
stick with the same characters. Don't they even still use the same theme song as they used for the 90s X-Men?
They picked it up a bit. They re-orchestrated it because they're like, well, the equipment back then, it sounds a little flat. So they kind of made it a little bit poppier, but it's still the same arrangement. And then some of the voice actors didn't come back. Some of them had to audition to see if they could still do it. And one of the characters, it's not odd. I just thought they'd change him at Morph. I thought he could only turn into people, but apparently he has their powers now, and I didn't think that. Anyway, I don't want to go on a whole X-Men thing. Well, Avin, it's been a short pod, but thanks for joining me. What's up, Microsoft? What's going on? I may have you back on to do other things with, like I said, with Nintendo and Sony, because I started thinking about this and reading about it more of what's going on, Nintendo? And they're just a jester, just laughing the whole time. We don't care. Our Switch has sold 130 million units and you're still buying the game, so we don't give a crap. We don't care. We don't even know what they're saying. We don't even know.
Has anyone looked at the bank account today? Oh man, there's so much money.
Yeah. Apparently there was, I want to say this before we go, apparently there was a report years ago that Nintendo wasn't doing bad, but wasn't doing great. I forget which year it was. Maybe the GameCube back in the day. And Microsoft being a young upstart, literally Microsoft. I don't know who was representing them at the time, who was the head of their games division. It was when Microsoft, it was the first, I think, OG console came out. They went to a rep of Nintendo and said, "Hey, do you want to sell your company to us?" And Nintendo, literally in the meeting, laughed and laughed and laughed and said, "No, go away, Microsoft." And then it's that cartoon thing of as they're walking out, you just hear the laughing coming out of the door when they close the door behind them, and you just hear laughing behind the door. So yeah, that would have been that's interesting. Nintendo's like, yeah, we had one bad console, we're doing fine, we had the GameCube and didn't do what we wanted, but we got something cooking later, So I think after that was the Wii. I think that's the one that came out after that. So. Yeah, I kind of sold 100 million copies, and you couldn't go anywhere without seeing Wii Sports. Yeah, Nintendo really was messing up, I guess. I don't know. The guy probably came into the room just playing Wii Sports and knew what it was, and they were like, "Hey, you guys aren't doing so well." He's like, "You think we're not doing well?" Anyway. Avin, thanks for joining me, and we'll talk to everybody next week. I don't know when we're going to do these again, but yeah, I definitely want to be like, what's going on, Sony? What's going on? What's it? All right, bye.